Live actions. Live actions. Live actions. But what are live actions? So over the last few years, streaming companies, streaming services have seemingly become absolutely obsessed with the live action adaptation of animated media. I mean, in the last year alone, Netflix has released live actions for One Piece, Avatar: The Last Airbender, Yu Yu Hakusho, Amazon getting into the mix with their Fallout live action series, and who can forget the live action show that really kind of started this live action boom, Hulu and HBO's live action adaptation of the hit video game, The Last of Us. So what exactly is going on here? I mean, is it possible that after years of butchering some of my favorite animated works with the dog shit live actions of the past, that studios have finally figured out the secret to adapting a video game or an animated series? Or is perhaps something else motivating these streaming companies besides, not just ruining some of our favorite franchises? Hello everyone, I'm Finn. Welcome back to Finn Films. Join me today as we discuss why streaming services are so obsessed with live actions. So when I was a kid, I had a dream. You see, I wanted nothing more than to be the person that made a live-action Dragon Ball Z movie. I mean, in the 90s and early 2000s, nothing out there was cooler to a preteen me than Dragon Ball Z. And for some reason, I got this idea in my head that it would be the most badass thing ever if they made a Dragon Ball Z movie with real-life actors. Of course, many years later, I would be absolutely shocked to learn that someone else out there in this big wide world of ours had the same idea as me. As in 2009, a Dragon Ball Z live-action movie, Dragon Ball Evolutions, would be released, and holy shit, it was hot garbage. Now, the young 13-year-old me was really confused and distraught. How could they do this to Dragon Ball Z? How could they get the movie so freaking wrong? Like, I mean, it felt like they hadn't even watched the series at all. But it was okay though, because you see, the following year, another live-action adaptation of another one of my favorite animated series, this time Avatar: The Last Airbender, was slated to be released. And this one was going to be directed by M. Night Shyamalan. So, surely, this time they'd get it right. Right? Fuck! You see, while I didn't know this at the time as a young little lad, but the live-action adaptation is like nothing new. Hollywood has been butchering all sorts of animated series, whether they be animated shows or video games, since like the early 90s. 1993 seeing the hilarious, ridiculous live-action Super Mario Bros. Movie, Goomba, fuck you, followed shortly by the cult classic Street Fighter movie, which was released in 1994. Hadouken! Both of these movies being so absolutely hilariously bad that they have developed a cult following ever since. I mean, the Japanese as well have been making live-action adaptations for like freaking years now at this point, with much better success than us over here in the West have had. And arguably one could say that shows like Ultraman and Power Rangers would really kind of pave the way for what the live-action adaptation would eventually become. Aside from a few outliers, up until like the last couple of years, Hollywood's attempt at making live-action adaptations of video games or animated series have been, well, a complete train wreck. So why then, we must ask ourselves, have the streaming services seemingly become so obsessed with live actions over the last few years? It really boils down to how streaming companies and services actually work, how they make their money. You see, the real issue with running a streaming service is providing a steady stream of consistent content that has been beamed directly into our eye holes. In order for streaming services to be profitable in the long term, in order for them to keep up their numbers of paying subscribers, they need to consistently provide a stream of content that the viewers actually want to watch, or they're just going to stop paying for it. I mean, that is if they don't forget that they're actually paying for it in the first place. If you are an anime fan, a bit of a weeb like me, you may have noticed that over the past few years, I would probably say like 6, 7-ish years, You can now watch your favorite anime or even newly released anime on all sorts of a number of American streaming services like Netflix and Hulu and Amazon Prime Video. For years though, before this, there was really only like kind of 3 main places to find and watch the newest episodes of anime, that being Crunchyroll, Funimation, and whatever was shown on TV like Adult Swim and Toonami. But you see, as anime as a medium, as a genre, has grown more and more popular, more and more mainstream like it is now, these streaming services realized that they were missing out on a real big cash cow opportunity and a really easy way to provide their viewers with content that they actually want to see. This, in my opinion, is why we've seen the rise of the number of high-budget live-action movies and series from these streaming services over the last few years. I mean, just think about it for a second. Like, if your main goal is to create a steady stream of content that your audience wants to watch, then what easier way to do that than to tap into an already established IP or franchise, an IP with a massive fan base, like, I don't know, a popular video game or anime. Think about how like a streaming service like Disney Plus operates, for example. Disney owned the rights to like some of the biggest IPs in the world. For example, Star Wars, Marvel, Harry Potter. I mean, have you ever really like sat down and wondered why Disney has released so many Star Wars and Marvel shows since Disney Plus's inception? I mean, take a second and think about how absolutely insane this is. Since 2021, Disney has released 13 different Marvel series, with 4 more slated to be released in 2024. That would come to a total of 17 Marvel series in the span of 2 years. 2 fucking years. And don't even get me started on what they've done to Star Wars. While the sheer volume of like Star Wars shows and content isn't nearly as egregious as what they've done with Marvel, Disney Plus has still released a total of 5 different Star Wars series in just the short span of a couple of years. We got 4 seasons of Mandalorian, 1 season of the Book of Boba Fett, 1 season of Obi-Wan Kenobi, 1 season of Andor, and 1 season of Ahsoka, with 2 more Star Wars live-action series set to be released in 2024, one called Acolyte and the other called The Skeleton Crew. So what then is the through line with all of these Marvel and Star Wars shows that have been released by Disney over the last few years? Well, most of them are fucking bad. Okay, yes, it's not completely all bad. There are a few saving graces, a few Star Wars shows that actually are decent, Andor being one of them, as well as the animated series Star Wars Visions, a show that is arguably one of the most like creative Star Wars projects ever. But all of this is, well, it's just too little too late for me. You see, Disney has at their fingertips access to some of the biggest franchises and fan bases out there with some of the most die-hard fans. They know this too. That's why they've completely milked their Marvel franchise for everything that it's worth. I mean, let's just think about it for a second. Let's put ourselves in the shoes of Disney Plus or any number of other streaming service that depends on a steady output of shows to keep people as paying members. Are we then going to greenlight shows that people may not watch, possibly greenlight new IPs, or are we going to greenlight shows that we know people are going to watch? AKA shows that tap into massive, already established fan bases. The logic that Disney is using in milking their massive IPs dry is the same logic that these other streaming services have been using, but substitute Star Wars or Marvel with live-action anime or video games. And again, this makes a lot of sense from the streaming company's point of view. Streaming services are super aware at how popular like video games and anime are across the entire world. I mean, in 2023, Netflix creative head for anime shared with Variety magazine that more than half of Netflix members globally tuned into anime last year. So then what better way to like guarantee viewership on a new show that you are releasing than to make it a live action of an already established massively popular series like, I don't know, One Piece, Avatar: The Last Airbender, The Last of Us, Fallout, Death Note?
Okay, well,
We don't talk about the Death Note live action. Why would you greenlight a massive production, a high-cost production of something new and something possibly really creative when you can tap into a fan base of an already established franchise by adapting it to a live action? So I think that really does answer the question why so many streaming services lately seemingly are making so many live action adaptations the last few years. But though it doesn't really answer the question why live actions seemingly have gotten so much better in quality, at least here in the West, over the last couple of years. How to make a good live action. So in general, in my opinion, I think that there are like a couple of baseline things that studios need to do in order to ensure that a live action is actually good. Number one, is the series actually adaptable? I think that a lot of times when it comes to like a live action adaptation, like these studios don't ever stop and ask themselves, should we actually adapt this work into a live action format? Like, yes, we could do it, but should we do it? You see, there's just some series out there that just like, they just don't work in a live action format. Some shows that work extremely well, like in an animated format, just don't translate the same into a live action format. Even with the massive progress that studios have made with CGI and special effects, there are just some animated works out there that like, they just probably won't ever work as a live action, as a lot of the times they just end up being, well, super cringe. For example, let's go back to my childhood dream, the Dragon Ball Z live action. This series, as much as it pains me to say it, probably like won't ever work as a live action, at least like not right now at this point in time. Why, you might ask? Well, it's just not believable. Like there's just some worlds, some stories that are just like, they're just way easier to adapt than others. Obviously, there's like 1,000,001 problems with the Dragon Ball Evolution movie that are why it ended up being completely hot garbage, but I think that even if they would have actually told the story accurately, as well as not cast a bunch of white people in these roles, or even made Piccolo look like this, unfortunately, I think even if they fixed all of that, the DBZ live action would always feel like a bit cringe. Basically, the more like fantastical the world is of the animated series, the harder it is to make it land in the live action adaptation. In general, the closer the world of the series actually resembles our own physical world, the easier it is to adapt to live action format. This being a problem that is much more likely to arise when adapting anime. I mean, let's just think about it. In theory, a live action like the video game live actions of Fallout or The Last of Us are a lot easier to adapt to a live action format than an anime like Bleach or Dragon Ball Z. Both the world of Fallout and the world of The Last of Us map on relatively closely to our physical world, both of them being kind of like post-apocalyptic like time warps of our modern day world. When we compare this to like the Bleach live action adaptation or the Attack on Titan live action adaptation or the DBZ live action adaptation, these just do not land the same. As crazy as it might be to say, I feel like a lot of the reason why some anime just don't land well as a live action really just boils down to like the character design, specifically the anime hair. As amazing as Toriyama's work is, I mean, the dude literally made like the most iconic anime hair of all time, it just doesn't work one-to-one in a live action. There's a reason why like so many DBZ cosplays just kind of look awkward. And really, it boils down to the hair. That actually might be like the only positive thing I would say about Dragon Ball Evolution is the way that they adapted White Goku's hair. Look, obviously, this isn't one-to-one, but it feels like close enough, and it's so much less awkward than something like this. This is one of the main reasons why I think the Rurouni Kenshin live-action movies really work so well, many people considering these movies to be like the best live-action anime adaptations ever. Rurouni Kenshin tells the story of a wandering Japanese swordsman who has vowed never again to take another person's life. At its core, it's kind of this like classic samurai story. As such, it maps onto like our real world reality extremely well. There's no crazy, weird, fantastical characters or powers that need to be adapted. No need to worry about any cringe anime hair or any weird anime character designs. As such, someone could watch the Rurouni Kenshin live-action movies and love them and think that they're amazing and have no idea that they were actually adapted from an anime. Number 2, Loyalty to the source material. The amount of live action anime and video games I've seen where I just sit back and think like, man, did these showrunners, these writers, even watch or read the original source material before adapting like this work? Like, it absolutely baffles me. Like, the whole point of a live action, especially like a live action anime, is that you are trying to capture this world of the animated series, the characters, and the story of the animated work into a live action screen. Now, I'm not saying the story has to be one-to-one for the live action to be good. Usually, that's basically like impossible to do because of the major time constraints that usually occur, whether it's in a live action series or a movie. In general, most live actions are necessarily going to have to change like some things to the story. Usually that means they end up cutting certain aspects of the story in order for it to actually fit in the allotted time that they are given. No, when I say like loyalty to the source material, what I mean is that the live action should be able to capture that same kind of feeling, the same atmosphere and vibe of the world of the animated series or video game that it is adapting. This includes everything from the world to the story, to the characters themselves, their character motivation, their character quirks, everything really that makes the characters and the world who they are from the original source material. This is one of the reasons why I personally didn't really mind the changes that were made by Netflix to the Avatar: The Last Airbender live action series that much. Because overall, to me, the Avatar live action felt like Avatar: The Last Airbenders. I believe that the showrunners were super loyal to the parts of the original series, the animated work that mattered, from the look and feeling of the world to the characters and their motivation and what drives them. All of the characters in the Avatar live action actually feel, look, and act like the characters that they are embodying from the animated series. Like, Aang is the same naive, happy-go-lucky 12-year-old boy in the live action that he is at the beginning of the animated series Avatar: The Last Airbender. Unlike how Aang was portrayed in M. Night Shyamalan's Last Airbender, where he is portrayed as this like weird, brooding, sad boy character that is really nothing at all like how Aang the character actually is. And again, it makes me wonder, did these people even watch the original animated series that they are freaking supposed to be adapting? The same also goes with my favorite characters from Avatar, Zuko and Iroh, the characters who, in my opinion, are easily the best part of the Avatar live-action series. I think the showrunners did an amazing job in capturing the essence of these two characters, what motivates them and what drives them, and their relationship with one another, and really how they capture Zuko's character growth. I mean, this character growth is arguably the most important part of Zuko's story, his progression from this angry, angsty exile prince, a character that is very much the kind of primary villain and antagonist, an embodiment of the Fire Nation at the beginning of the series, but then as the story progresses, we see his humanity begin to show, and we see the inner struggle taking place within Prince Zuko. We begin to understand his character and what motivates him more as the story progresses, as he slowly begins to realize that the thing that he has been chasing his entire life, his father's approval, was not the most important thing, that this acceptance that he had been searching for was right there the entire time in his uncle Iroh. On the flip side, though, we have a live-action adaptation like Netflix's Yu Yu Hakusho. A live-action that, in my opinion, started off pretty freaking strong. The characters, in my opinion, are all very believable and pretty accurate representations of their anime character counterparts. No, where this live action really goes off the rails is in the drastic changes that are made to its story and the pacing of its show. If you didn't know, the anime Yu Yu Hakusho has, in my opinion, one of the best tournament arcs of all time that takes place in the second season, called the Dark Tournament arc. This is my favorite part of Yu Yu Hakusho. The Dark Tournament arc has easily the most iconic moments from Yu Yu Hakusho, but the writers and the showrunners for the live action decided to do the unthinkable. For some reason, they decided to try to fit like 2 seasons of Yu Yu Hakusho into a measly 5 episodes. So instead of getting anything that actually resembled the Dark Tournament arc, they basically just took like some of the most iconic fights and scenes from these seasons, and then just chucked them all together in the last 2 episodes in an absolute clusterfuck rushed mess. And don't even get me started on what they did to Toguro, one of the main antagonists of this series. This is him in the anime. Yeah, that boy be vascular as fuck. Now this is him in the live action. You see, the majority of people who are actually sitting down and watching live actions were probably fans of the original, like, IP that was being adapted in the first place. So they're probably going to be much less forgiving when the live action makes, like, notable changes to the story, the world, or the characters. I think that's why so many people are, like, super skeptical whenever one of these streaming services announces a new hyped up like live action that they're going to be releasing, because we've been burned like so many times by shit live actions in the past, whether it be Avatar movie, the Dragon Ball movie, Death Note, Uncharted, take your pick really, that most people seemingly almost have like PTSD when they see one of their favorite series being adapted into a live action format. Like, it's just way easier and safer to assume that the studio is going to absolutely butcher the live action that it is adapting than to get on the hype bandwagon only to be eventually let down and disappointed. In all honesty though, I'm like pretty surprised, shocked even, you might say, at how good a lot of these live actions have been over the last couple of years. It really seems like studios have finally realized like what people actually want and care about like in a live action. As such, it actually feels like these showrunners are respecting the original source material when they adapt these anime or these video games. I think the Fallout show is a pretty good example of this. Like, when you watch this show, it really does feel like you are transported into the world of Fallout from the video game, from the characters and their motivation, to the many subtle references to the mechanics of the video game series, all the way down to the music, the iconic Fallout music. It really does feel like they nailed the tone of like what a Fallout series should be. I think as well, the Fallout series like also really benefits from like not trying to adapt an already told story like one-to-one. Instead, they decided to tell a new, unique story altogether that just happens to be set within the Fallout world. As such, they are free to take like these creative liberties within the story, using the Fallout lore as kind of like building blocks to like build their story on top of, without having to worry about angering a horde of like diehard fans. For example, like what happened with the Avatar, Netflix Avatar live action series. In general, I have to say, I am tentatively really excited for like what the future of the live action adaptation has in store for us. It really does feel like we've kind of turned a corner, and the days of like super dog shit live actions like Death Note, Dragon Ball Evolution, and the Last Airbender movie are well behind us. We've made like so many advances in CGI and special effects that we can actually kind of portray these worlds accurately in a way that's not fucking cringe. Of course, there's always going to be the occasional blundered live action adaptation out there. It's basically impossible to avoid at least one of them, but I don't see these streaming companies like slowing down their production of these live actions anytime soon, especially when you realize just how many really popular IPs that are left out there that haven't been adapted yet, and when you think about the amount of success that these live actions have brought these streaming services over the last couple of years. I mean, the Fallout series alone pulled in 2.5 billion minutes of watched content in really just its first week of airing. So I doubt we'll be seeing these streaming services slow down on live actions anytime soon. So I guess then I will continue to hold out hope that one day someone out there will make a DBZ Dragon Ball Z live action series that isn't completely hot garbage. As always, guys, if you did enjoy the video, learn something new, please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, as that is the easiest way to help support me. Videos like this take a long time for me to script and edit and film, so liking, commenting, and subscribing is really the easiest way to help support me and put the video into the algorithm. If you did enjoy this video, then why don't you check out one of the other videos on screen now. And as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you in the next one. Drink your water, hug your mother. Until next time, peace, love, Adu.